Hello everyone, welcome to Mi's Bookshelf. Welcome to a winter reading wrap-up. As you can imagine, this is going to be crazy long because I did not make a wrap-up for December or January. And now that it is March, I'm just gonna do a whole season. So let's buckle up, go get a snack, go get your hot drink if you want it, and let's get ready because it's gonna be a little bit. So in December, I started off by reading a bunch of books for the readathon of the Christie's Missing Readathon. And so I actually made a vlog of that. I will link that to you, or direct you to that. I will just quickly go over the titles here because I did review them there and that takes time out of this. So I read Mr. Parker Pyne, Detective, and Then There Were None, both of which by Agatha Christie. I read Towards Zero and Murder on the Orient Express, all by Agatha Christie. I did read listen to The Mysterious Case of Agatha Christie, which is a Great Courses lecture on Audible, which I really enjoyed over there. And that's in that. And then I also read the first Father Brown short story in the second collection, and I did not really enjoy it. So those were all in that one. I also read a couple others during that time that I didn't really review. So the first of which is I managed to listen to the next Voyage of the Dawn Treader, or the next Narnia radio dramas, which is Voyage of the Dawn Treader. Really enjoyed that one, but I think I was starting to taper out because I haven't gone back to listening to them in 3 months. Then I read, I'm sorry. Then I read a book called Whirlwind, which I actually am going to grab. Never mind. I have finally put my Christian fiction books all on one shelf, which is a new shelf, which I'll show you when I have it all done, but they're not organized yet. So anyways, I read Whirlwind by Dana McNeely, which I got in as an advanced reader copy. Fantastic book, an amazing biblical fiction about the time of Elijah and then turning into Elisha. It was about these people who were living under an oppressive king, or living under an Israelite king who was not following God, and how they go about certain situations. There is a specific instance in the Bible that is really connected to this story, and I really enjoyed it. It followed a couple characters from the first book, which is called Rain, and I really recommend it. So yeah, very great. Highly recommend. I bought it as soon as I could, and actually my Christian bookstore is now ordering them to sell them too, because they were just that cute and amazing of a cover. Well, not cute, amazing covers and amazing sounding book, because it is amazing. I listened to a couple podcasts, or I guess they're kind of podcasts on Audible. I listened to True North Heists and Great Heists with Michael Caine, or Heist with Michael Caine. Both of them I've listened to before and I really enjoyed re-listening to them. I read a couple arcs. I did read several that month, which was my goal. So I read The Crooked Little Pieces, Volume 1 by Sophie Lampton. This was an arc that I had got a while ago. The author reached out to me and asked if I would review it. I said yes, but I wouldn't have time for a while, and she said that's fine. So I picked it up in December finally, and I think it's an interesting story. It's a family saga that covers these girls' entire lives, essentially. These are twins who are born on separate days, and everything about them is opposite. They are, I believe it was German or Dutch, and they moved to London during World War II, and it is about them being very different. I don't really prefer saga books. I also don't really love, just like how stark the characters were against each other. But I think overall, this is a really good book. It was really fast and easy to read, and it was really engaging, even though it was not my type of book. And a lot of tropes that were in it weren't my kind of thing. So it's not a book fault. It's a Naomi's not the right reader. However, I do think it's a really interesting book. I gave it 3 stars, and I recommend you read it if you like any of those family drama, long saga books. This is a book for you. I also finished off the Peacock Hill romance series, which I read like 5 of them, all to varying degrees of enjoyment. So I read A Heart Realigned, A Heart Redirected, A Heart Rearranged, I ran into this problem before. The next book went A Heart Reconsidered. So they overall were a really cute, easy, quick to read romance series. I did struggle with certain particular stories in which the characters were a little too over the top. But I did enjoy the different tropes that each book explored, and yeah, just different kind of things. Obviously, they're romances, and these romances are also like really fast-paced ones. which is like, you know, 2 weeks as opposed to 2 months. So that was something that is not my kind of thing, but I did enjoy them for the most part. So I'm glad I read the whole series. I also finished off another series. I read the rest of the Oz series. So I read The Lost Princess of Oz, The Magic of Oz, Glinda of Oz, and That's Where I Drew the Line. This series was really hard for me to keep invested in. It was basically hate reading at a certain point. I did enjoy The Lost Princess of Oz a lot more than the previous books up to that point because we actually got to see the characters who we had known for so many books. So that was nice. I didn't love certain elements of this series. I feel like it was very evident to me that when at the beginning, Frank Baum wrote that the children had written in their ideas and he used those, he did not edit those ideas and make them cohesive to an actual well-written, cohesive plot story. So that's my complaint about the series. However, I did enjoy them, and I think that it is a series I can gladly check off my bucket list to read. I have 2 more arcs that I don't want to lose in the middle of all these books, which were Sundown by Susan May Warren and Between the Wild Branches by Connellan Cassette. So Sundown is the 3rd book in the Sky King Ranch series, and this book has to follow book 2. You have to read them in order. I'm saying that and I haven't read book 1 yet, but you have to read book 2 before book 3, essentially, based on how the plot and how the characters are. Each book is about one of the triplets who are from this ranch. Book 2 I loved, and I thought that was amazing. It was like forced marriage, a marriage of convenience, but amazing. Super suspenseful. They're Christian suspense, and they are so well done. The second one, or the third one, being Sundown, follows these 2, the brother, Colt, and I believe her name was Tay, who is pretending to have amnesia for the first time, or the second book, the book I read, Sunburst. And basically she's hiding a big secret about herself, and it's going to impact the whole world. It's really, really suspenseful and really intense and really great. I really enjoyed it, and I can't wait to read book 1. I just have to find the time. So that is still my priority list, even though I need to do it. Between the Wild Branches is a biblical fiction about during the time of like the judges before Samuel, I think, really became king, or maybe not Samuel became king, but before Samuel really took over as a judge. This follows Lucio, who is a Philistine and had come to Israel in the first book with his sister, but then ran back to the Philistines because he didn't feel like he belonged. And this story follows him and his childhood sweetheart, as she is actually was kidnapped and captured as a slave and is now enslaved in Philistine with the Philistines, and their story. And it really shows a different side of biblical fiction, which I don't think we typically see. So really loved that. And that finished off a duology. I was killing it, I gotta say. I also read the very short abridged version of Agatha Christie's autobiography. I listened to the audiobook that she read herself. So it's only an hour and a half. It's very short, but I did read that, which I thought was great to hear her words through her own voice. I do still want to read the big one though, because there was no way that contained all the information that was in her actual biography or autobiography. I started another series. Well, I started rereading a series. I felt like I really just needed a comfort read, and I read the Fox and O'Hare series. I was starting that. I haven't finished it, but I decided to start off with the novellas. So I read Pros and Cons and The Shell Game, and then I went on to The Heist. It is such a fun series and such an easy series to read. The series is by Lee Goldberg and Janet Vonovich, and I've got to say, it is just so much fun. And like the con men and the perspectives and the humor, I really enjoy it. So I'm glad to be starting a reread. I do need to continue on, but I actually purchased all the books physically because I'm like, I need to own these books because they're just that good. But I'm not going to read on past book 5 because book 6 and on was not good. At least it was tolerable. If you understand the word tolerable from like Pride and Prejudice, you get it. All right. Next, I actually tried some Fyodor Dostoevsky. So I read a couple short stories of his to try out his work because that was the author jar pull that month. So I read The Crocodile and Babuk. I don't know. Basically, both of these short stories get 3-star. I don't remember anything about them. I just remember that they were mediocre and not really my kind of style. I feel like they were really depressing. And that's just not me. I know that now. But I'm going to try some of his bigger work like Crime and Punishment or The Brothers Karamazov to see if I like the longer work better. So he's not off my radar yet, but definitely not the short stories for me. I also read a Christmas short story, which is called All He Wants for Christmas by Lizzie Shane. I gave this one 4 stars. This one was about a guy. Let's see if I'm not getting the wrong book. I'm just going to check before I give you a synopsis. That might be wrong. Oh, yes. Okay. I was right. This one's about a guy who is a Hollywood actor. He's like a mega star. And basically he goes on TV and he's like, I just had time for a family now. Totally playing up the fact that he was who played a dad in a movie. And so the next day, a kid is dropped off on his doorstep. And this kid's like, yeah, I'm yours. And I don't have a place to go. So suddenly it's an instant family. He also has his assistant, I believe her name was Andy. I feel like I'm remembering that. I can't see that in the synopsis right away. But yes, she's very much a planner and she was going to go home for Christmas to her brother's wedding. And suddenly she has to take care of her boss, who's a pain, and his newly discovered daughter. So it's a Christmas romance. What else can you say? It was great. I enjoyed it. And I thought it was a very cute way to do a Christmas romance like that. All right. Next up, I actually finished another series. I'm discovering what I did last in December. Anyways, I read Maya and the Lord of Shadows, which is the 3rd and final book in the Maya and the Rising Dark series, or whatever that series is called. This is by Rena Barron. I enjoyed this series. It's a series based on African mythology about a girl named Maya whose father actually is in charge of the line between our world and the shadow world. And it is a really interesting series to see as it develops. And I really enjoyed seeing the characters and how they all interacted. So very good book, in my opinion, and very good series to try if you like middle grade mythology, like fantasy mythology, like Percy Jackson. But yeah, it was really cool. Okay, let's move on to January. Okay, first book I read in January was also an ARC. And it's definitely my favorite of the year so far. That's I'm Not Charlotte Lucas by Casey Stockton. Amazing, adored it. Fantastic. This is a Pride and Prejudice retelling set in the modern world. And it's in a world where the book Pride and Prejudice exists. And that's not common. And I've always wondered what that would be like. And this was just perfection. It followed a girl named Charlie, who her little sister happens to be named Mariah. And her her best friend happens to be named Beth. And she's always the boring one, the plain one. And Beth always gets all the dates. And Charlie is obsessed with Pride and Prejudice and loves the idea of love and Jane Austen, but she's aware that she is 27, and that is not a good thing when your name is Charlie Lucas. So it is just amazing. Basically, her neighbor tries to set up a date for her grandson, who happens to be named Colin. And the rest is history. It is just so fun, and it shows such a great perspective of the character of Charlotte Lucas in a modern world with modern sensibilities, but also with a really fun romantic twist where she's the hero. And it's not just her becoming Elizabeth Bennet, it's her being Charlie Lucas or her being Charlotte Lucas, person, but getting her own, the hero of her own book, essentially. I really loved that. I thought it was fantastic. I did not like the book Charlotte that I had read before, but I loved this one. And this is such an amazing book. Everyone should read it. Put it on your reading list for July, for Jane Austen July. Put it on your list now because it is that good. It is so good. And if I'm wrong, you can come let me know that it just wasn't your favorite, and that's okay. But I don't think that's going to be the case because it was just so good. Anyways, recommend that so much. And like earlier I mentioned with the Heist series or the Fox and Hare series, I read The Chase, which is the second book, and my feelings are the same. Now, from this point on, my review is going to be very censored because I have a project going on, and honestly, the project I haven't gone back to. I stopped early February and haven't gone back to, but I do really want to go back to it, so I'm not going to say much. I'm just going to say it's about Agatha Christie and her work. That's all I'm going to say. So yeah, you'll find out all my reviews in that time. I will say though that I have loved The Witness for the Prosecution. That was an amazing short story. Amazing. So yeah. Okay. I also read Beyond the Tides, which is the first book in the Prince Edward Island Shores series. I had read book 2 before, so this is going back and reading book 1. Book 3 comes out August, maybe? This summer, which I'm definitely picking up. This is by Liz Johnson, and I love the Canadian setting. It's just so cool to read a book about Canada or set in Canada, and it's like about the fishing group and how they have this situation coming up, and these two who hate each other, but they never got to know each other. They end up working together on a fishing boat for the summer, and they have a lot of uphill battles to go through. So good. I really enjoyed this one, and it is such a great romance. So that one definitely got a 4-star. I also read Cleopatra's Daughter, which is an arc that I had. This one's by Jane Draycott. So this one is literally about Cleopatra's daughter. It is where you learn all about Cleopatra and Antony, who are Cleopatra's daughter's parents. I think her name is Celine's parents. You learn about how they met and then what happened, but then you also learn about how Celine would have been brought to Rome, and very little is said about her history, but a lot is said about other people, so we can get a lot of information. I really enjoyed looking at the ancient world through this information, and I found it even like interesting because it talked about the fact, and I feel like I've mentioned this before too, but I really loved that it talked about things about the culture that I didn't realize, whether it be citizenship versus non-citizens, or men versus women, or the Senate, things that like culturally I didn't know before. And I was really cool to learn about that in this book here. So I really recommend it. It came out in January, I believe. January. So I really recommend that one. Okay. I read Gulliver's Travels, a graphic novel. This one, the graphic novel medium was fine. It was good. I actually enjoyed how it like had little footnotes about certain things. So it was like helpful to middle grade graphic novel. However, I did not like the story of Gulliver's Travels. So Jonathan Swift gets a no from me. I will not be reading the main book that's based off of. I won't be reading Gulliver's Travels. I did try it once and it just wasn't working. And now I know why. Then I read The Secret Passage, which was for Whodunit-a-thon, because I needed a room that had a secret passage. Anyways, so I read it's by A.E. Parker, and these are short stories about the characters in the Clue board game and what kind of mischief they get up to. It is really fun. Little mysteries. They're kind of middle grade, but they're really sometimes graphic, and I don't know. They're very much like tongue-in-cheek kind of thing. So I really enjoyed them, and 4 stars. I will be reading the whole series eventually. Okay, I also read Treasure Island, which was the same graphic novel style, and that one gets 4 stars. The graphic novel style served its purpose, and it did a great job. It also did things like explaining what mutiny was and different words that maybe middle graders don't know because of such old language. All right. Then, skipping past all of my extra stuff that I'm not talking about, I read Nemesis, which is by Agatha Christie. This is a Ms. Marple, and I read this for the Read Christie 2023 prompt of, was it love? I think it was love. I don't get these really stupid ways to come up with a book theme. Anyways, Nemesis was good. I really enjoyed reading about Miss Marple and how she is so underestimated and how no one believes her, but she is Nemesis. And I really enjoyed that she brings judgment to situations, and that she's called upon to find the mystery out or figure it out after this point. And I really recommend it. I really enjoyed Nemesis a lot. However, I do agree that you need to read it after A Caribbean Mystery, because that gives away the end of Caribbean Mystery, to be honest. Well, maybe not the end, but it gives away certain characters' storylines. I also had a buddy read in January, which was Phantom by Jo Nesbo. This is the next book in the Harry Hole series that I had not read at that point. Book number 9. This one was an interesting mystery. It follows Oleg, who we meet in several books before, and he is accused of murdering someone, and he's in jail. And Harry, feeling a deep connection to Oleg, goes and tries to help him and tries to find out the real situation and try to find the real killer. It was very interesting in certain ways, but then it was just like super heavy on drug information and like the drug trade and selling drugs and how drugs are made. And I was just like, it was just not my kind of enjoyment level. So I think I gave it a 4 because of how much it kept me after a certain point. But honestly, before that point, I was really not having a great time reading about all of the drug trades and everything. So there's that. I also read an arc which is called A Mystery of Mysteries, The Death and Life of Edgar Allan Poe by Mark Dwadazak. This one, I have to admit, I did not know anything about Edgar Allan Poe. I knew he was American, and I knew he kind of was pre-Victorian. That was all I knew. So when I read this one, I first requested it because I'm like, literary biography, how awesome. And it was an amazing book. I really enjoyed it. This one covered his whole life, and it really went into depth about, how he went about certain things, his mental health, different situations his family had, how his growing up really impacted him. And it did go into his marriage, which I had heard briefly of, but I didn't know anything really. So I really enjoyed it, and I thought it gave me great insight into reading Edgar Allan Poe's work, because I have never done so, but I have it on my shelf right here behind me, and I am going to read it because it was just so interesting, and I didn't expect that. So yeah, I had a very funny book choice. So for the book covered book club, the prompt was a foiled cover for January, and I had nothing I wanted to read, nothing I could find easily. I don't have a lot of foiled covered books, but I have this little book about Jane Austen quotes, which was foiled on the cover. So I read that and I gave it 5 stars. It was just so fun to read Jane Austen's quotes. Very quick and easy and a joy. Another arc that I read was How to Catch a Daddysaurus. So this is by Alice Walstead. This is part of a series like How to Catch a Monster, How to Catch a Mermaid. I did request this one. I read these books at work all the time. And this was a great one in celebrating dads and what they do for us and how they are just there for us and help us and support us and how to celebrate them. So I really enjoyed it and really recommend it. If you are looking for a good picture book series, this is a picture book series. You should get How to Catch that series, but this is a great addition to that series as well. I also read A Novel Proposal by Denise Hunter. This one gets a 3-star because it's just, I didn't like the main character. I didn't like her at all, and I just felt her so annoying, and I'm like, I know I'm not a dog person, I don't own a dog, and I was like, I think I kind of have a trauma attached to dogs, very minor, but still, and so I'm just not a dog person. And this lady had a dog, and she would be like, oh, aren't you my Gucci baby? And I'm like, I just want to rip your hair out or rip my hair out. So no, not a fan. It was an interesting idea. The plot was an interesting setup, but honestly, I just couldn't stand the character's relationship with her dog. So yeah, that definitely got 3 stars. I think it's a great book if you like dogs and if you are, so the plot is about this woman who's an author and she writes Westerns. But when she's writing Westerns, that's not selling. So her publisher says, you have to write a romance and you don't have a choice. And if not, you have to give back all the money that you don't have, essentially. So she goes to this place, like a timeshare place, and tries to write a romance novel, but she doesn't know anything about romance. So she basically meets her neighbor who is a very unhappy person, and she starts writing a romance story about them, like about him and her, and things become interesting. So I think it was an interesting plot. I just didn't like certain quirks. I also read a lot of the Little House series. I managed to read the first 6 books. So I read Little House in the Big Woods, which actually got a 3-star. That was sad. Actually, I talked about all of this in my Little House readathon vlog, so I will direct you there for all my thoughts. So I read Little House in the Big Woods, Little House on the Prairie, On the Banks of Plum Creek, Farmer Boy, and The Long Winter, and By the Shores of Silver Lake. I also read another book, which was called Who Was Laura Ingalls Wilder? This one's by Patricia Brennan DeMuth. So I recommend that biography of hers for middle grade. And I was happy to read a bunch of the series. Okay, we're getting there. We're getting there. I read another Agatha Christie. Obviously, it's been months. And this one was for the prompt of blunt object being one of the murder weapons. And also this was for the buzzwordathon, which was a verb in the title. So I read One to Buckle Your Shoe, or My Shoe. One to Buckle My Shoe by Agatha Christie. This one's about Hercule Poirot, who visits his dentist, goes home, and then later that day he gets a call saying, your dentist was found dead. We saw that you were here today. Do you mind coming and checking it out? And his dentist was deemed a suicide, but Hercule Poirot thinks something's fishy, and it can't just be that simple. I gave this one 4 stars. I think it was a really interesting story, and I really enjoyed how even Hercule Poirot has a fear of the dentist. I really have grown to love him. I didn't like him at all when I started reading Agatha Christie, and I have really grown to love that man. Although to know him personally would probably be a chore for me. The next arcs are part of my review video, my arc vlog that I made. I guess I've made a lot of vlogs recently. All right, anyways, so I read Empress of the Nile, which is about a woman who helps save Nubian temples in Egypt, that are from like ancient Egypt time era. So this is by Lynn Olson. I highly recommend, 4 stars. The London Seance Society by Sarah Penner. I gave 3 stars. I was not a big fan of the ghost element, which I should have known when it was a seance books, but I explain all my thoughts in my vlog. I read The Maid of Ballymacool by Jennifer Dabeel and gave that one 5 stars. It is a Cinderella retelling set in Ireland, and it is so good. It's at a boarding school too. I also read Daughter of Eden, which is by Jill Eileen Smith, and I gave that one 5 stars as well. Really interesting biblical fiction. And I read a couple Bible books in the last couple months. I've read 1 Peter many times. The Bible study I'm currently doing with my church is actually on 1 Peter, so we have to read it once a week. And that's really interesting, but it's been a lot of times I've read it. I've also read Genesis, but because of my 1 Peter Bible study, I'm behind on the other books of the Bible, which is fine. I'll get there. I did mark something else that I have read just because I wanted to give it a review so people can like see it more, which is called I'm Happy, Sad Today. And it is just an emotions book that I think is fantastic for preschool, kindergarten ages to talk about feelings. So wanted to give that one a note. I think it's a 5-star worthy book. But yeah, that is it. I have gone over everything except for my secret stuff that I read in the last 3 months. Thankfully, I have a few vlogs that you can go check out if you want to for certain reviews in more depth, but wow, it's been a long time since I've done a wrap up. So thanks for sticking through it if you have. I really appreciate it. Let me know down below if you read these books and if you share the same thoughts as me, or if you have different ones. I'd love to talk about that down below. Also, if you would like to subscribe because you are new here and you would like to check out more of my content, please do. I would really appreciate that. Also, don't forget to leave a like as you are on your way out, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.